I wonder if you've ever watched any survival programs where people go off into the wilderness somewhere and try and live off the land. The key things they need are water, shelter, fire and food. And to get food, they often set traps. As me and Ruth have watched these programs down the years, it's amazing to see how many different traps they make. The particular animal that they're trying to hunt will affect the kind of trap that they make. And today in Mark 12, two different traps are set by the religious leaders. Now these traps aren't made of wood and wire, but they are designed to kill. They are question traps that have been carefully designed to catch Jesus out, to make him say something so controversial that the religious leaders can arrest him and hand him over to be killed. And there's lots for us to see in this packed passage. So let's pray for God's help as we look at his word together now. Let's pray. Father, we come before you in humility, knowing that we need to be taught by you. Please help us to listen to you now, and would we be changed by this passage, your powerful word. In Jesus' name, amen. Now last week, we weren't watching a survival program in our house. We started watching this program, Your Honor. It is pretty tense, and with each passing episode, it feels like the tension is building more and more and more. And that's also what's been going on in the last couple of chapters in Mark's Gospel. It's gripping stuff. Ever since Jesus acted in judgment against the fruitless Jewish nation and temple, there's been this rising tension that's been building between him and the religious leaders. And that tension continues to build in the passage that we're looking at this morning as three different groups of religious leaders try and trap Jesus in his words. Now, there's a famous phrase that there are only two certainties in life: death and taxes. And the traps that the religious leaders lay for Jesus are about death and taxes. Firstly, the tax trap, verse 13 to 17, the tax trap. Have a look again at verse 13 of Mark 12. Later they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. Now the Pharisees and the Herodians were not a natural partnership. Far from it, actually. They had a deep dislike of each other. See, the Pharisees were the religious leaders, and they were patriotic Jewish Bible teachers who would have been deeply saddened and angry at the Roman rule over the Jewish people. The Herodians, on the other hand, were King Herod's employees, and they were seen as political compromisers. They were very happy with the Roman rule. In fact, their jobs depended on it. So the Pharisees and the Herodians normally would have drank in different pubs. They wouldn't have been on one another's Christmas card list, that's for sure. And probably most of the time they would have been abusing each other on Twitter. But they joined together in Mark 12 to take on what they see, or who they see, as a greater enemy: Jesus. Mark tells us that they come to Jesus together. Let's put them both together, Pharisees and the Herodians, put them together, the heresies, in order to catch Jesus in his words. In our day, there would be a camera in Jesus' face, a crafty reporter and a techie whiz kid standing by to edit and upload the video to show the world that gotcha moment as Jesus falls into their trap. And they don't go straight in with their question. They butter him up a little bit first. They flatter Jesus. Flattery is an excessive and fake praise that's given for selfish gain. And that's what the heresies are doing here: excessive and fake praise. Jesus, you are a man of integrity. You're not swayed by people. You teach the truth of God. They don't really believe what they're saying about Jesus in verse 14. If they did, well, they wouldn't be trying to trap him. They would be trembling before him. And then we get to the trap in verse 14. They ask, "Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay or shouldn't we?" Now, tax is always a controversial topic, and politicians are regularly questioned to see if they're going to raise taxes or lower taxes. But this question has a deeper meaning than just economics. It's a brilliantly clever question. If Jesus says no, don't pay taxes to Caesar, then the Herodians will go running off to the Romans and say, arrest this man, this Jesus. He is encouraging people to stop paying their taxes. Is he planning a revolution? You better get rid of him. But if Jesus says yes, then the Pharisees will run off to the Jewish people and say, look, this Jesus, he supports the Roman occupation. What a traitor. So Jesus is in a spot of bother. It looks like he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. But, verse 15, Jesus knew their hypocrisy. Why are you trying to trap me? Jesus knew that their flattery of him was hypocrisy, and he knew that their question to him was a setup. It looked like a well-laid trap, but look at how Jesus answers in the end of verse 15. Bring me a denarius and let me look at it. They brought the coin and he asked them, whose portrait is this and whose inscription? Caesar's, they replied. Jesus asks for a denarius, a coin, which would have been a day's wages. And on the coin was Caesar's portrait and his inscription, looking something like this. Similar to our coins today that have a portrait of the Queen and writing on them. And Jesus makes his point in verse 17. Then Jesus said to them, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Give to Caesar what you owe him. It's an encouragement from Jesus to submit to the rulers and authorities and to pay tax. See, Jesus isn't a political revolutionary. He's a personal redeemer. And he calls his people to be good citizens in paying our taxes. He's saying this, remember, in a culture where the taxation money that was raised would be given to the Romans, which would then be spent to keep the Jewish people under the Roman occupation. It would go towards paying the army that would keep the people suppressed. So we today, even when we don't agree with all that our money is being used for, we are commanded to pay our taxes. It's part of our witness to the world around us, as we ask for jobs to go through the books, despite it costing us more. It's us not doing cash-in-hand jobs in order to avoid the tax man, or not declaring certain earnings so there's more left over for us. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Jesus says this is the right thing to do. But Jesus also says, give to God what is God's. Well, what does that mean? And I think the way that Jesus describes the coin helps us. He says to the crowd, whose portrait is on this? Whose portrait is on the coin? Or whose image? It's Caesar's. Well, what has God's image on it? In Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, the very first chapter of the Bible, we read these words. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. All people are made in God's image. He created us. We belong to him. Therefore, giving to God what is God's is to give him what we owe him, our lives. But this isn't a giving that is begrudging or just giving out of fear of imprisonment. We give our lives to God out of joy and gratitude because he first gave his life for ours when Jesus went to the cross. We give our lives to him in response to his love and out of delight at his good and loving and right rule. So Jesus is trying to convince those who are listening that there is a greater need than paying earthly taxes. giving to God what is God's. Well, what will giving our lives to God look like? Think about different parts of the body that God has given us that might help us to think about what giving to God looks like. We give God our hearts, not the blood pumping organ, but our soul's centre that we've thought about as we've read through Mark's Gospel. What we most love and what we most cherish, we give to him, putting him as our greatest love. We give God our minds, seeking to view our lives and the world around us, what right and wrong is, by what God says in his word. We give God our mouths, seeking to honour him and speak for him with our words. We give God our hands and our feet, seeking to honour him with our actions and decisions about where we go and what we do. We give God our lives. And this links with chapter 8, verse 34 of Mark's Gospel, where Jesus says that his followers, Christians, will deny themselves. We will deny ourselves extra money as we willingly pay our taxes because we're followers of Jesus. And even more than that, we will deny ourselves self-rule, handing over our lives to be loved and led by God instead. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. So, the tax trap. And Jesus answers this, doesn't he? Just worth pausing and thinking about how he answers this. He answers the question here with amazing wisdom. When politicians are faced with tough questions like this one, they're often waffly and you feel they've just dodged the question a little bit. But Jesus answers with one short, wisdom-filled answer. It's incredible. I don't want us to miss that. It's okay for us just to marvel at his wisdom. Wow, what an answer. And as we face tough questions at times about our faith, we can seek his wisdom. There's never been anyone as wise. We can ask him for wisdom. And he also answers with gentleness. There isn't an aggression or argumentativeness to him. He sees through their flattery, but he still answers the question and makes his point. He's showing again his authority through his wise teaching. He is the true king. His wisdom leaves those listening amazed, verse 17. The camera that was eagerly pressed into Jesus' face to see him slip up now pans back to the faces of the interviewers. The spotlight is again on their rejection of this wise King Jesus. So first, the tax trap. Second, the death trap. Now by death trap, I'm not referring to having to travel in the same car when Ruth is driving. It's verse 18 to 27, and the next group of leaders who come to Jesus trying to trap him. This time on the subject of resurrection from the dead, verse 18. Then the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him with a question. The Sadducees are a different group of people who were very wealthy. They were like the elites of Jewish society. They only accepted the first 5 books of the Old Testament, and as the verse just told us, they did not believe in the resurrection of the dead. And they come to Jesus with another question, verse 19. Teacher, they said, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife but no children, the man must marry the widow and have children for his brother. Now the law that the Sadducees are referring to comes from Deuteronomy chapter 25 and was given so that a man's family name could be continued. Now it's a strange little scenario that they give Jesus, and to help us understand what's going on, I've got some of Lee's Duplo to explain it.
The oldest of 7 brothers gets married, but sadly he dies, leaving no children. So the second brother marries the woman, but he dies, leaving no children. So the third brother marries the woman, but he dies, leaving no children. So the fourth brother marries the woman, but he dies, leaving no children. So the fifth brother marries the woman, but he dies, leaving no children. So the sixth brother marries the woman, but he dies, leaving no children. So along comes the 7th brother, And you can imagine him wondering what his future wife puts in the gravy and getting a 2-for-1 offer on weddings and funerals. He too dies, leaving no children. And the question that the Sadducees ask in verse 23 is, at the resurrection, when they're all alive again, whose wife will she be, since all 7 were married to her?
The Sadducees' story is deliberately ridiculous because they're trying to mock the belief in the resurrection of the dead. And so as the storyteller finishes, we can imagine the smiles and the smirks of the Sadducees, their high fives and handshakes as the storyteller kind of swaggers away. It's a real mic drop moment. We've got him here, lads. But have a look at Jesus' reply in verse 24. Are you not in error because you do not know the scriptures or the power of God? As Jesus says this, I imagine the smirks have turned to scowls in the faces of the Sadducees. Us? In error? I don't think so. But Jesus says that they are in error for 2 reasons. First, they do not know the scriptures. And second, they do not know the power of God. That's pretty comprehensive reasons for being incorrect. You don't know the truth that God has revealed in Scripture, and you do not know the power of God. That is what he is able to do. In other words, Sadducees, you don't know God at all. In verse 25, Jesus explains what the power of God will do. When the dead rise, they will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven. When the dead rise, not if. God has the power to raise the dead, and he will do it. And Jesus also answers the question of whose wife the woman will be in their story. He says that when the dead rise, there will be no marriage for those who enjoy God's renewed creation. Now, for some of us listening in, this may sound like a disappointment. For others of us, it may sound like a relief. But why won't there be marriage in the renewed creation? Well, a few weeks ago when we read Mark 10, Jesus spoke about marriage and divorce. And I reminded us of when me and Ruth got married, Pete gave us this little model car to remind us that earthly marriage between a man and a woman is a model of the greater marriage between God and his people. So when we are with God in the renewed creation, we will be enjoying the real thing. So there will be no need for the model anymore. In verse 26, Jesus speaks about how they do not know the scriptures. He says, now about the dead rising. Have you not read in the book of Moses, in the account of the bush, how God said to him, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. You are badly mistaken. Jesus quotes here from Exodus chapter 3. And in that chapter, God doesn't say, I was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who lived hundreds of years before Moses. He says, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am currently their God. But how, if they have died? Because there is life after death. God is the God of the living. The Old Testament scriptures teach it, but the Sadducees didn't know their Bibles like they thought they did. The Sadducees had already had their thoughts about what is and isn't possible. And nothing could change their mind, not God's power or God's word. Now that's a big danger for all of us too. We can have ideas about the Bible and about God's power to raise the dead. Many people in our culture don't believe that the Bible is the true word of God and don't believe that God has the power to raise the dead. Maybe you're one of those people. Let me encourage you to check out the evidence for the power of God that is contained in here, in the Bible, the scriptures. In it, I believe you will find reliable evidence that Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. So don't be like the Sadducees and let your current ideas about what is and isn't possible blind you to the truth that is in front of you. Well, why is it so important to investigate this? Why is it important to check out the evidence? Well, if you remember last week, we read the parable of the tenants and how God will act in judgment against those who reject his Son. The dead will be raised, meaning judgment will happen for all people. And the only way to be safe when that judgment comes is to trust in God's Saviour, Jesus Christ, who is risen from the dead. Let me say a little bit more here about life after death. The Bible says that God has put eternity in the hearts of men. Therefore, we hate death. We have an inbuilt desire in every single one of us for life, eternal life. And we spend our lives trying to figure out what life is all about and how to make it as good as we can, or at least try and avoid as much of the bad that we can. But there will always be a longing for more in each of us. One Christian writer wrote this: "Our whole education tends to fix our minds on this world. When the real want for heaven is present in us, we do not recognize it. Most people, if they had really learned to look into their own hearts, would know that they do want, and want acutely, something that cannot be had in this world. There are all sorts of things in this world that offer to give it to you, but they never quite keep their promise. If we find ourselves with a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we were made for another world. We were made for another world. And through belief in Jesus, that world is ours for all eternity. That's why it's worth investigating." If you are a Christian, I hope that this passage has encouraged you. I know many of us have felt frightened over the last year, frightened for our own lives and frightened for the lives of those that we love. But there is hope in the face of death. Our God is the God of the living. He has raised Jesus from the dead. And verse 25, the prospect of no marriage in the renewed creation, is a reminder to us that the world we are looking forward to will be so different from the world that we now know. The Bible tells us that the renewed world will be a place of no suffering, no sin, and no end. It will be different to this one. So much better. But there will also be similarities to the world that we now know. The world we will one day enjoy will be a physical world where we will eat and drink and work and play and discover. It will be like this world in its beauty, but we will enjoy it fully as we were made to. It will have other people there who we will always get on with and laugh with and enjoy life with. Resurrection life is the center of our hope. So if I'm suffering physically now, my ultimate hope is not in surgery or medication. It's in the resurrection of the dead, where there is no more pain. If I'm suffering mentally now, my ultimate hope is not in antidepressants or in a change of circumstances. It's in the resurrection of the dead, where there is no more mental illness. If I'm suffering with life disappointing now, my ultimate hope is not in more money or a different job or better relationships. It's in the resurrection of the dead, satisfying life to the full. We should daydream about our future. We should share with one another our excitement about it. And we should invite others to it. But if you're anything like me, it's easy to lose sight of the future, isn't it? It can feel like a long way off. It can feel like it's a distant hope that lacks help in the present. Well, that's why we need to remember the scriptures and the power of God, verse 24. See, it's as I read the scriptures that my sights are raised to the world to come. It's as I pray for God's power to be at work in my heart, causing me to long for my future home with God more than I long for an easier or improved life here. The scriptures and the power of God help us to long for resurrection life. Our God is the God of the living. Sadly, the Sadducees had missed these wonderful truths. Well, in the first half of our passage, we saw how God was our creator. We are made in his image. And in the second half, we see God as recreator, able to give life beyond the grave. And it's as our hearts are desiring our future home that we will increasingly want to give to God what is God's. Verse 17. The Pharisees, Herodians, and Sadducees came to trap Jesus. But he shows us again his great wisdom and his authority to teach. Will we listen? His words call us to give our lives fully to the God who created us. And his words comfort us that he is the God of the living. There is life after death. Let's pray. Father, we are amazed at Jesus' wisdom and authority in his teaching. Thank you for recording in your word these conversations that he had. We pray, Lord, for your help to give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Help us to willingly pay our taxes. Help us to give to you our lives because we know that you can raise the dead. Grant belief, Father, to those listening who do not yet believe. And for us who do, help us to live with our sights set on our future home with you. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, our final song this morning is all about our future home, our future hope. Let's sing, There Is a Hope.